Okay. If I'm not mistaken, I'm recording now. Welcome to another SIG scheduling meeting. Today is February 23rd. And a quick reminder that this is being recorded and it's going to be uploaded to YouTube. So be mindful of what you say and respect each other. So for the first topic, we have Ukri. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing your name correctly.
Good enough, quite well.
Okay. So do you need to present or are you
I would
fine?
actually like to.
Okay, let me give you co-host capabilities. There you go.
Okay, I'm trying to present all of my screen here. So last time we met, by the way, could somebody verify that they can actually see my screen?
Yes, we're seeing code.
Okay.
UML
Yeah, this
code.
is VS. Yeah, this is VS Code. So last time we met, I was telling about this need to have a plugin into the scheduler which would do topology scoring. And as a recap of that, the idea was to, basically do resource scoring, similar to what node resources fit is doing, but now for topologies. So suppose you have like 4 topologies where there are nodes, and in this example here, one of the topologies has 2 machines, and assuming that the machines are relatively unloaded or have a similar load, then this bottom topology here would have like significantly more resources than the others. So the intention with this new plugin was that to be able to give a score for the entire topology, so that the best topology would nodes would get like 100 each, and then the worst topology could be like this, would get a 0, and those topologies that would have resources somewhere in between the worst and the best would get something linearly as the score. So that was the idea, and I was suggested to do an entirely new plugin instead of fiddling with the node resources fit itself. So that's where it started from. And the thing is that to do this kind of topology scoring, I would actually need the score values from the node resources fit, which is doing things quite nicely and it's nicely configurable and so forth. So I was thinking that, okay, if I do a new plugin, what are my alternatives? Do I like copy the code of node resources fit? That wouldn't make much sense. I don't want to do copy paste code. So instead, I first created an implementation with composition, and that was fairly simple. But and actually, I could show that what it looks like. It was little 84 lines for the basically the wrapper part of it, and the main idea there was just to have a score plugging interface in a new plugin. This is composition example, and basically just instantiate a node resources fit into there and place it there, and at that point it's already like ready pretty much. It can run if you just have the rest of the boilerplate there, and so it did, and that was kind of fine. And to get the basically the score back to this new plugin, all I had to do was to basically add the score extension, return something else than nil, and the framework delivers the calculations from this included node resources fit to the normalized score function then. And I can do my magic then, calculating those topology scores, which is not that interesting probably for anybody. But this was my first take at how to reuse this existing plugin and to get. And in terms of how much code went there, not much. So it became looked pretty nice. Okay, at least in my opinion. What do you guys think? Not big? Any takers? Well, anyways.
That sounds good. Another alternative that I can quickly think of is to simply assume. Wait. I don't know if you can assume that if I don't know if you can assume that the other plugin is also running, or this replaces the original plugin. I'm not sure which
No,
is the intention.
I actually want them both to be running because I like the node resources fit, like I said, and it kind of like gives a good score for the individual nodes.
Okay,
So
I see.
by no means I don't want to disable it. It's not my
Um,
intention.
so in that case, there is already some pre-calculations that are stored in the scoring in the state data. How's it called? The state, the framework cycle state that you could
Mhm.
reuse.
Yes.
But if you, it sounds like you want actually the full
Yeah,
score.
I want the full
So,
score. So
right.
the drawback with this design here is that it actually runs the same node resources fit calculations twice. So that's not ideal. It would have been ideal to get just the score from node resources fit and continue from there. So I didn't like this too much. And the other basically, let's say, drawback that I saw was related to the actual configuring of this thing, because I need to have the node resources fit arguments. So if I want to do like something a little bit different than the defaults, like calculating GPU resources, which is basically what we do, uh, I would need to configure that thing twice, once for the node resources fit, just for the individual node scoring, and then I would actually have to replicate the same scoring arguments in the scheduler config for this one and have it, over there. So it doesn't look too good. So I started thinking, what can I do to, make it better? And that kind of like took me to this cycle state here, which says nicely that state data stored by one plugin can be read, altered, or deleted by another plugin, which is really what I wanted. So I started thinking, how can I make this work so that the node resources fit scores would be provided through the cycle state to some new plugin of mine. And that's what I went after. So um, after fiddling around with the framework side a little bit, I came up with something that should, unfortunately, this is not updating properly, but let's see if it, now it does. Okay, so I came up with this. So, and this is, by the way, in this, it's a little bit more complicated than is necessary. So only the top right corner is actually necessary for my use case. But for the sake of doing a demo to you guys, I went a little bit over the top and created a little bit more of these example plugins then. So in the demo that you will be seeing, there's node resource fit is going to be the source for the other plugins below it. And the framework is going to know, based on the arguments of these two plugins over here, invert example and topology scoring, that they actually want to have the scores from node resources fit. And then the framework is going to do a little bit of magic and write score channels, as I call them, into the cycle state. And these guys then will read the scores channels and receive the scores from there. And then I have another one over here, which is a sum example plugin, and it's requesting the scores from this invert example plugin and the topology scoring plugin, like that. And again, the framework does its magic and writes score channels to the cycle state, and this sum example can then receive those scores. So that's going to be the demo of the day, basically. And even though you're probably not that much curious, but this shows how the connections were configured down here. So there's a bunch of plugin args which say pipe score plugins and then the name where they want to have the score from. So for instance, this sum example at the bottom, it wants to have the score from topology scoring and the invert example. So these guys, and similarly the others. So pretty trivial stuff, actually. and these go to a scheduler profile called node topology spread scheduler. And I've disabled a few plugins just because there would be too much prints in the log, and my demo is just about log prints. It's not going to be overly fancy, but let's see the demo. So there's the pod, and like I said, all I'm going to show is like log prints. So I'm grepping through basically the scoring, and the scheduler config is the log level is maxed to Spinal Tap levels, so it'll be printing all the scores. So let's see. Do we get a demo effect here? No, we didn't. So let's go and see. So the node resources fit was where things were supposed to start. So it gave the nodes, which by the way were present in those topologies that I presented earlier, these kind of scores. So they're pretty fairly similar to each other. And then we have several plugins going on here. So we have the topology scoring thing, which should be giving the best score to the one topology which had 2 nodes in it, and it is. If you remember the names of those, they were TGLH2 and CMLS2. So since node resources fit, if you calculate the sum of those, that topology had like way more than the other topologies, which only had 1 node in them. So this is the best topology, so they're getting 100. And the rest of the topologies only had a single node. So among the rest of them, this is the worst. So it's getting a 0, the CFLS, and the rest are then linearly pretty close to the worst because they only had 1 node. So that kind of like proves that the topology scoring works, but at the same time, there's this composition example actually running, so the code that I was showing you, and it has the exact same score as the topology scoring, so yeah, no surprises there. So these guys, exact same score as a composition. So functionally it's the same in terms of getting my use case where I wanted to get, but conceptually this pipelining is totally different. And it's worth mentioning maybe the other plugins as well. So the invert example, what is that? So basically, the invert example is a very simple scoring plugin, which takes the input score from basically any configured other scoring plugin and calculates a 100 minus the input. So it kind of inverts the logic, which is, well, maybe not so useful as just as a demo here, but if you start to think about the potential of such a thing, you could invert any scoring logic with that kind of a concept, which could be handy, although it's not overly useful if you have the same weight for the input and this guy, because they will be canceling each other out, but which is by the way happening in this demo. But anyway, putting that aside, so the last one was the sum example. So this is like if I show the graph again, so what was the topology again? So no, actually it's the demo is probably the one. So this is summing the invert example and the topology scoring. Okay, so those were the configured things. So it should be summing the inversion and the topology scoring. So for instance, CFLS has a score of 26. Okay, so invert has 26 and the topology is 0, so that adds up correctly. But let's see something. CFLS 5, well, that was 17 and the topology score was 10. So again, yeah, adds up correctly. So kind of like proves the point, it's calculating correctly. And that kind of ends the demo. So yeah, these were the let's say plugin reusing alternatives that I could come up with. I kind of like the pipelining idea myself because it has lots of more potential to it, but unfortunately that's of course a framework side change, although not a big one. I only spent less than 80 lines of code there, but yeah, anyway, it is what it is. The sources, by the way, are available at my fork of the scheduler. So, and it's actually at the meeting agenda. There's a link to there. So if anybody is interested into taking a look, please do. And I think it's time for questions. Does anybody want to see anything like from the sources? Oh, I could maybe show what the one of those, let's say the invert, for instance, what it looks like.
I might be more interested in the framework side of changes.
Okay.
And also there is, I was wondering how you configure the pipeline, because it looks like these arguments for the plugins are like each of the plugins has a different configuration struct. So I was wondering how you
Well, that's visible in the framework side, like if you wanted to see that. So okay, so let's close the plugins and let's go in and
I'm not sure
see.
if we will have time to go through all of that, but so unless we have more time later, but I have other questions such as where do you want to go from here?
Well, it's that's a good question, but basically what I started with was, the desire to have a new plugin because we have a use case for that. Now, this pipelining thing that I showed you, well, it's nice to have, but I'm not going to die if I don't get it. But there's potential in that one. So, I mean, it's open for debate whether it would be beneficial. And, ideas are welcome. I'm just
I
presenting it as
think
a possibility.
from my point of view, it's kind of an overkill for to have this complexity in the scheduler if we don't have other use cases. So maybe you could start by sending an email to the mailing list to gather feedback from other developers to see if anybody sees value on this. Otherwise, it's like added complexity in the framework, which if there is no other use case, we probably don't want to maintain in upstream.
I joined late, but I guess I get the idea of the framework changes that. So can it fit some user scenarios that some users want to do some runtime, pretty elastic debugging on some particular path. We don't know the rules. We cannot set that statically in the upstream. So maybe this framework can be useful for extending those kind of mechanisms in their in runtime production environment, and some parts gets some weird behavior, and we want to look into that without changing the logging level, etc., etc. So we can bring any extra logs on that, etc. So I think the framework change can adapt to that, right? Am I understanding right?
That's an interesting idea. I didn't initially think about it as a debugging tool or
But it's
anything like that.
it's not the same.
It's yeah, it's this pipelining idea actually gives more like flexibility to add things after another plugin. For instance, now we have these pretty much hard-coded normalization functions and things like that. You could take this further and pipeline another plugin doing normalization functions or whatever you want after one or the other. And like I said, this inversion logic or anything that can be quickly calculated and alter the scores of one plugin or the other. So that kind of adjustability is like the biggest benefit that there would be in this pipelining, in addition to the fact that if you want to do this kind of a composition that I was after, then you don't have to run twice the same thing. But in my case,
got it.
yeah, so in my particular case, I want to have both the node resource and fit resource results, and I want to have them summed into the actual end score as well. And I want to have this topology score for the topologies. So I want to have them both, but there could be situations where, you know, you'd like to tweak the results from some plugin with some kind of a mathematic function, like I was explaining earlier. But you wouldn't really want to anymore have the original source plugin score as such. You would just want to have the end result after, you know, pipelining it. So that would be require a little bit more work instead of the current logic, which is summing everything up to the final score of the nodes. You would probably need to have something similar to the summing plugin that I was showing, doing things instead of the current logic, which is summing everything up. But yeah, it's more a flexibility thing, allowing for tweaking the scores.
Okay, it sounds like at least you can just plumb a plugin in the end and to debug the score for each node. Am I right?
Well, you could do
Okay.
if you had such a plugin.
Yeah. So I mean, with the frequent change that you crafted, so that you can introduce a final plugin for information purposes to dump all the score for one node, for each node. I mean.
Yeah, and about this framework side change, it was just a quick hack to get it working, but it was based on basically looking at the arguments of the plugins. So there was a special meaning given to one special argument of the plugins. So that's the way that it works. It's a really small patch actually, so it won't take a long time for anybody to look into it. It's less than 80 lines, and that's all that is.
Okay, I will take it closely. Thank you.
So for once, the node resources fit plugin is one of the fastest plugins we have. So that by itself, like being able to, you know, reduce calculation might not be as important, well, depending on the use case, right? If you're thinking of thousands of posts per second, maybe it is important. But yeah, back to my original point, if you see value on having this upstream, it would be good to gather feedback from others to see whether it's worth to upstream, but whether it's worth to maintain long term.
Right, I understand.
And I also noticed that you opened a PR to the blog.
Yeah, well, I was thinking that, you know, if nothing else useful comes from it, well, maybe at least the blog entry.
Okay, so for that, we actually have a separate blog targeting Kubernetes developers, which would make more sense for this kind of content, because this is not, this doesn't face upstream users, right? So
no, it's developers. Yeah, this is definitely developers.
right, so there is a repository for that. I don't have it at hand. If you don't find it, let me know in the Slack and I can look it up. But yeah, that would be a better location for this kind of content, and is I guess a bit more free form, and you know the audience is it fits better the audience.
Okay.
So you could consider that, and I suppose, oh yeah, your entire fork is public, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, useful for others to find those links if they are available. And I think we can go from there. Yeah. In practical matters, we are too late in the 127 release to configure
Yeah,
this for
I wasn't even
127.
imagining. I wasn't even imagining this is a POC.
Right.
Yeah, I was thinking about doing a KEP though. I guess
Yeah,
I'm allowed to.
I think it might be worth. I think I will start with a email.
But I
to
can do the email first if you will. So no
or
problem.
even the blog post for the developer blog. Does anybody else in the community have other questions?
Please read the blog, by the way, if you haven't. That was for everybody.
There's another piece of feedback I would have is probably you want a better name than topology, or clarify, because when we compare to the existing topology spreading plugin, it might just be confusing for people to grasp what this is about. At least it was for me. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. But okay.
It's kind of like it is very much topology related, and this latter one that I was demonstrating, it's a generic topology scorer. So basically, you can hook it up with anything. It doesn't have to be the node resources fit. Any score plugin can be hooked up to that thing. I'm not sure if they are really useful, but if you wanted to calculate topology scores based on something else, you could. This one allows it. That's the flexibility. That's the flexibility in there with this pipelining approach. Anything can be connected to anything, as long as it's a score plugin.
I see your point. Okay.
It's not hard-coded.
Okay, so yeah, I guess compose topology scoring or something like that. But those are fine details. If there are no other questions, I don't think I see Vinayak here.
He was not planning to attend.
Okay.
He's just worried about his huge KEP.
I think so. If you don't have anything else, agree.
I'm done.
Okay, thank you. So for Vinayak's PR, I believe it was Wei that was reviewing this PR.
Yes, I was, but that was a long time ago. Yeah, I will try to refresh my memory and Winning says there's nothing significant change since I last reviewed that. I will check that. I think I did some live debugging with chain on the nchain, but I just need to refresh the memory. I will take a look. Yeah, but if you are interested, you can take a look. I believe this has been postponed by more than one release, so yeah, it's good to have extra eyes on it. Yeah, did you hear me? So I didn't see anyone talking.
Loud and clear.
Okay.
Okay, I actually lost my audio when sharing the screen. So it looks like most of the changes were in the kubelet side, right? Since the last time, right away.
Sorry, I got distracted.
It looks like most of the changes since the last time we reviewed were in the
I think
kubelet
so.
side.
Yeah, I think some of changes are to adapt to different runtime. Be aware of the change because you need to do in place. Yeah, request change on the underlying container runtime. Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. I cannot commit to review this. I already have a lot of PRs. Abdullah, do you have a chance to also take a look?
I can take it over. I just said it's good to have just extra eyes on it, but it's not necessary.
Yeah, I can. Please, tag me Wei on the PR.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Okay, so with that, we don't have any other topics. But we still have a few minutes left. If anybody else has any other questions, we have 10 minutes.
Hello. Hi.
But interesting that the blue line, the text doesn't have a link associated with it. It's just a text. All right.
Right. Yeah, I was wondering if it was a bug in Google Docs or actually it was just not a link. It looks like it's not a link.
Never mind. I can find the PR. Yeah. No worries.
Okay. And please fix it in the notes if if you find it. Oh, okay. Sorry. I think Ilya was talking.
Yes. Hi. Yeah, I was just trying to maybe take a moment to ask a question about trying to reach out somebody from the scheduler project. Do you know if this is a good meeting to talk or maybe follow up in separate channel on it? I have a couple of issues I would like to discuss.
Yeah, if you want to talk about descheduler, this meeting is good for that. We also have a recurring meeting for the descheduler itself that we do on every other Tuesday. I think that should be on the calendar.
Excellent. Yeah, I'll try to find that. Thank you, Mike. Is it okay if I reach out directly to you just to kind of get some clarifications? I don't want to spam and waste everybody's time on it.
Yep. I'm on Slack. You can just ask in there.
Perfect. Thank you.
Sure.
You can always ask in the SIG scheduling channel and start a thread.
Yeah.
That should be enough because some other there are multiple developers in the descheduler project, so maybe somebody else can help, not just Mike.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Mike,
yeah,
just maybe one option is that you can create a dedicated descheduler Slack channel because like Quark just create a dedicated Quark channel. So you can also do that for descheduler.
Yeah, that's an idea. I don't think that we get too many descheduler specific topics to need its own channel. It's kind of nice having it in there, but if it starts to become too much or other people agree that it should be its own channel, maybe we'll bring that up at the next descheduler meeting too. That's a good idea.
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay, I think if there are no other questions, you can give 5 minutes back to everybody.
Yeah, thank you everyone.
All right, bye-bye.
Thanks, bye.